Jess is an incredible advocate. She is an Epstein survivor, and she has been living with post-traumatic stress disorder for over 30 years. And she is also the founder of the social safety app With You Too. Now, I've really been looking forward to this conversation, and I have to say that if you've been seeing any of the Epstein headlines everywhere in the news and feeling confused or overwhelmed, I am on that same page. I'm in that boat. I am confused as well. This conversation is for you. We are going to talk about what's actually happening with the Epstein Files, why institutions keep failing survivors, and what people can do when systems don't show up the way that they are supposed to. This episode is really going to be about community care and how we can protect each other when accountability feels out of reach. A note about this episode is that Jess and I recorded this about one day before the Department of Justice released about 3 million more Epstein files. There's an estimated of about 5 million total that need to be released. I know some of the files have been removed from the site due to improper redaction and survivors' names being released. The point of this is that what Jess says in this episode is still very much relevant to the current scenario, that redactions are incomplete, they are not correct, they are definitely mishandling the situation. It is still many days, over a month past the deadline when all of those files were supposed to be released. I just want to make a note that there has been more files that have been released since this episode was recorded, but what is said in this episode is still very much relevant to the current situation. Okay, let's get into it. So, Jess, I feel like a lot of people have been seeing the name Jeffrey Epstein in the headlines again, and we're all kind of thinking, wait, what the hell is actually happening? There's like a lot of noise in the headlines, but not a lot of clarity. So could you kind of start by grounding people with what's going on with the Epstein files? Where do things stand with all of them, as well as the survivors?
Thank you so much for asking me. And I just want to put this in here because we talked about it just before we started recording. I've actually lived with post-traumatic stress disorder, or post-traumatic stress injury, as I prefer to call it, longer than you've been on the planet, Shannon. That's how long. That's how long.
That
And
is so crazy.
it is, but, that says a lot about the era, the 1990s, when things happened for me and for, millions of others. So let's start off with talking about what happened November 19th when the Epstein Files Transparency Act was signed into law. That was a historic moment, not the signing it into law, but the fact that we got a near unanimous Congress to pass that bill. So it was completely bipartisan. There was support from everyone in Congress except for, one guy, that one guy. And that had the support of the American people. Marjorie Taylor Greene at our press conference on the 18th said that they had unprecedented volume of calls to representatives in Congress telling them that they wanted this bill passed. So that marks the date when the 30 days to the deadline of releasing the files was supposed to happen. That marks the beginning of that countdown to the 30 days. So there was a countdown. 30 days to releasing it, 20 days to releasing the files, 10 days to releasing the files. December 19th comes and a very small number of files were released. And what people hear in the headlines is like, oh, it was less than 1%. Then they hear, oh, millions more files have actually been found by the DOJ. Millions more. But what they don't understand and what is not reported on enough is that it's not only that the files were, a small fraction of files were sent, it was that redactions were horrific. They would redact, pages and pages. I think there was a Congress member that appealed to one of the committees and showed, I think it was a data set 4. And it was literally just, they went through a tablet of just look at blacked out. And the only thing they were supposed to redact was the survivor names.
Right.
That's it.
That was what I was just about to ask, was that what was given versus what was supposed to be given. Like, it was a very clear set of guidelines of survivors' names were supposed to be redacted, and that was it. And then when you have pages of black ink, that's obviously not just survivor names.
Yes. And what was interesting was the interpretation of that I heard in a committee at one point. One of the gentlemen on one of the committees said, well, you asked us to redact and then you said we did too much. So then we changed it and we just can't seem to follow your directions, as if it was something in the directions being given in the law. The law was very clear. It's victims' names. That's it. That's it. But we saw not only pages blacked out, we also saw pages that were blacked out and the only thing visible was a victim's name. A full blacked out page and the only thing not redacted was the victim's name. So there's the skill level. I am questioning the reading comprehension of the DOJ. I'm questioning the actual ability of the DOJ to really understand what redaction means.
Right. Like the DOJ had one job.
You had one job. And then the lack of communication has been extreme. We've heard nothing. There was no public statement made before the 19th saying, hey, we're going to be releasing only less than 1%, just so you know. And we expect it to take this amount of time based on the fact that we have been doing redactions since I believe it was March that they had started all of this, that they hired hundreds of lawyers to go through. It's going to take, such and such amount of time. Nothing. We heard nothing. But there's one thing that's not being reported that people don't understand, is that typically when you release millions of files, you have to give some way to understand context of the files. You set them up by date. You set them up in certain ways that is easy to go through and search those documents and know exactly what you're looking for. That did not happen. So just bunches of files were thrown into this database and made public. So it seems as if the DOJ was saying, well, we complied, but it is so messy. It is so unprofessional. It is unprecedented in the way it's being handled, with the redactions, with no redactions, with no context, no inventory list, nothing.
And so the importance of having the date and it being searchable so that survivors can go look at it, so the public can understand it, because the whole point is to be able to look at these files and understand what happened, to understand who needs to be held accountable, where did things go wrong. And so it feels very devious to me, and it's not with an honest heart. It's like when a kid is told, don't go there, and they're like, oh, well, I didn't, like they leave a piece of information out, but it's lying by omission, but they still did the thing that they weren't supposed to do. It feels very much along those lines to me.
Exactly. And so here we are. It is I believe we're at 41 days since that deadline. The other deadline that was missed was the DOJ was supposed to present a list of why redactions happened. That was a requirement in the law. They did not comply with that deadline either.
Just to make sure I'm understanding. So on December 19th, 2025, all of the files were supposed to be released by then. So it could have happened before, but by then. So not only have they not released I think they're saying like 2 million files. Is that what's being said? 5 million files. So not only are 5 million files not released, but the files that are released are not even released properly. They're incorrect redactions, whether it be survivors' names are there or people who are not survivors are redacted. And is there any conversation around when we are going to get the files released, or is it just kind of, oh, whenever, hoping that everybody forgets about it?
I think it's the latter. I think there's a hope that people will forget about it. I feel like there's a normalization of the sloppiness so that any level of decent drop of information will be looked at as a positive. I feel frustrated because I'm not seeing Congress respond either and hold this DOJ and hold Pam Bondi in contempt of court like it has been threatened. And so for me as a survivor watching this institutional betrayal, it feels horrific, and it's happening in public. So everybody else is seeing it as well. Everybody else is along for this ride and seeing how egregious this cover-up of corruption is. And Congress isn't doing enough about it, in my opinion. In my opinion, I'm not seeing any action. We're seeing a lot of talk. We're seeing a lot of strongly worded social media posts, but I'm not seeing a lot of action.
2 things. First thing that you made me think of is How low does this administration and the DOJ, like, how low are they thinking of the American people that we are just going to turn a blind eye to child sex trafficking, to hundreds of people being abused by Epstein? Like, how low of them to think that we'll just, oh, that's fine. You guys don't actually have to be transparent. Like, that feels crappy, I think. Thing two, when you mentioned that Congress, you feel like you're not doing enough. What is something that you would like to see from them?
I would like to see them follow through on the threats that have been made of holding Pam Bondi in contempt. I think that's really important. It's symbolic and it matters. And it matters because you can't threaten it and then pull it away and say, yeah, we're not going to do it when we're at 41 days past a deadline. That there's been no compliance. This is the other thing I think is important to mention. What I'm seeing across social media is the American people feeling badly for survivors and being really supportive of survivors of Epstein, sad about us not getting justice. And what I think is being missed is that us not getting justice is not just about us. It is showcasing what kind of Department of Justice we now have. And if we're not getting justice with millions and millions of files, that should scare every single American. Because that showcases what they can expect if their child is ever needing justice or accountability.
Even yesterday, my mother, I was talking to her about a friend who was struggling, and she said, well, why didn't they report them right away? The person who assaulted them, why didn't they do that? And I just kept thinking about what you always say is that we haven't made it safe to report. And this is on a world stage, we are seeing what happens when you have evidence and you have multiple victims and, like you said, millions of files, and we still can't get justice.
Exactly.
It is very discouraging. And so I wanted to just ask, how are you doing with all of this? Because I think I can feel myself, and obviously I know you as a friend. And so, I feel very directly connected to you, and I feel sort of connected to these files, but I'm not actually connected to
But you
the
are.
files.
You are in a way. I think that's a really important thing is the sense of vicarious trauma that the people in the United States, other survivors, because you're not just a friend of mine, you're a survivor. You're someone that has had to deal with a justice system to try to get accountability. And I don't remember the details of your case. If you were able to get accountability, that's great. But as you well know, even if you did, it's rare. It's not the norm. And we're seeing that norm of a lack of transparency, a lack of justice happening on a grand scale. And that affects everyone. That affects every survivor. It affects every family member of a survivor. That affects every single human being hoping to feel safe in our country because our country is keeping us safe because they are enforcing justice. Justice Department has one job. Justice Department has one job. And that's for all of us. When I see people in my comments saying, oh, I'm so sad for you, I really hope you guys get justice, I correct them immediately and say, it's not just about Epstein survivors. This is about justice in America, period. It should concern every American. It should concern every survivor, every family member of a survivor, because if the Justice Department can't do this job with millions of pages of evidence, no one has any hope.
Absolutely. This is making me think of, I think it's Taylor Swift who said this, but if I'm being honest, I don't know. I saw it in a bathroom on the stall once. It was my freshman year of college. And it was this quote that said, sometimes justice doesn't even feel like it matters anymore because the process is so dehumanizing. And I think this is just the clearest example of that. If we have to fight this hard, if we need a act of Congress to get this, that is just, it is so dehumanizing and is so exhausting that you start to question, is it even worth it? So I want to ask how you're doing. I know that, you just said that everybody is impacted by this, everybody who is following along, and everybody is feeling this. If you know a survivor, if you are a survivor, but I just want to ask you, Jess, how are you doing right now with all of this? I think people want to know.
You asked how I'm feeling, and I'm going to try to answer in the context to try to help understand what happens in a brain with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I am already very finely tuned in to moments of anxiety. So even small moments can feel anxious. Even small moments can trick my brain into going to hypervigilance and insomnia and perseverating and having intrusive thoughts, really, really horrific intrusive thoughts, which then affects my digestion, which then affects the tension that happens in the back of your neck, which causes severe headaches, sometimes then going into migraines and the inability to eat and digest even, and then try to rest. So your cortisol can flip. Your cortisol ends up being higher throughout the day, and it's really low when you wake up in the morning. So when you're trying to get to sleep, you can't. And when you wake up in the morning, you're exhausted because your brain never quite calmed down enough, never quite rested enough. That happens on a normal day.
Now, what about a day when the news is crazy?
So when the news like there are murders happening across our country, when there is institutional injustice and betrayal happening on such a comprehensive scale all around, that inability to feel safe in my body and in the world, and I think it's all of us, is really heightened. So I have to work extra hard, and I do. I have to work extra hard to cope with those symptoms. And I think it's important that we talk about those symptoms because those symptoms are part of the injury that I always share about when it comes to sexual harm causing trauma.
I would really love if you would just briefly, I know it might be hard to be a little brief about it, but talk about all of the things, or at least a fraction of the things that you have to do each day living with post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress injury.
It took me a really long time to learn what my body actually needed because one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder is to dissociate from your body so you don't listen. So the first thing I had to start learning to do was actually listening to what my body was telling me. Listen when I felt tired, even if it was 11 a.m. Listen when my body needed food, even if I wasn't hungry and didn't feel like I could just, I had to find things. So for example, even if I can't eat anything, I will have 2 cups of bone broth because that's really good for digestion. It has protein in it. My body's getting good nutrients, but I won't have to consume a really big meal to try to get all the nutrients my body needs.
That is such a good tip. I just want to make sure we're emphasizing that, everyone. Bone broth. I've never even thought about that. I've had bone broth, but I didn't even think about how you can just drink it. You don't have to think about chewing anything. It lasts for a while in your fridge. I love that. Okay. Bone broth.
It has collagen in it, and so it's really good for your digestion. The other thing is bone broth, not just chicken broth. It's very different. It's when they use the bones to make that broth, it infuses it with protein. It's very, very high protein. It's a great snack to have. It's a great snack before you go to sleep at night. It's important to then get a lot of protein throughout the day. For me, for example, because my cortisol can be off, my sugar is off. And so keeping my sugar regulated throughout the day is really important, which means a lot of small meals, a lot of snacks here and there, and not carbohydrate snacks, but things that really help regulate my sugar throughout the day. So things like celery and almond butter. I do turkey jerky, apple and cheese, things that include protein in my snacks.
Which are hard to eat when you don't feel good. That's one of the hardest things.
And that reminds me, so I get protein shakes. There's a couple of brands that I like that are plant protein shakes in a bottle for when I'm too tired to even make anything, but then I make sure I can grab a shake. That's one of the things. The other thing, so eating how I eat is really, really important. Listening to my body and resting when I need to. But that really forced me into a really strict sleep routine. Because just like I tell you that I'm really sensitive to anxiety and things perking up my anxiety, I'm really sensitive to things agitating my nervous system, my very sensitive nervous system. So what's important for me to do is recognize how my nervous system gets activated, woken up. And so at nighttime, I have to be really, really strict about calming it down. I spend hours before I have to go to sleep. I have a very strict routine. In fact, I have it written down. So this is my sleep routine. No caffeine after 12 p.m. I don't drink at night anymore. All lights and sounds go down by 7 p.m. No regular lights after 7 p.m. This one thing completely changed how long it took my body to wind down. That one thing. I didn't even realize that the light in my bedroom was so bright because I would turn off the TV, turn off all electronics, ready to go to bed, and I would turn on my bedroom light and I'd be ready to go to bed and I'd turn on that light and it instantly woke me right up. And that was stopping my body from calming down. And even that one thing ignited my nervous system. So I had to make sure that I actually changed out the light and I got I think it's a 10-watt light bulb, like a really low watt light bulb in a pretty pink tulip light.
I like that.
So it's very low. And then I use a Himalayan salt lamp mostly as my light at night in my bedroom. So everything in the whole house goes down. Temperature goes down to 62. I like it really cold. 62, 64 is supposed to be the really good temperature for sleeping. I like it. I tend to like it colder. I wash my face and get ready for bed about an hour before I even think about going to bed. Because the cold water, the hot water, even just the stimulation of washing my face would wake me up, would get my nervous system ready to go. And I use a hot wrap all around my neck while sipping. I'm going to mention a brand. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, mention brands.
Okay.
Sponsor Jess. Sponsor me. Sponsor all of us.
So I use Moon Brew. Moon Brew is a nighttime supplement that has like magnesium and all calming mushrooms and things that really help your body settle down. So I do that in a combination with other forms of magnesium. I probably take 3 different forms of magnesium. People think they can just take magnesium at night, but it's not just magnesium. They actually want to take a couple of different types of magnesium at night. And so Moon Brew does one. Then I take a magnesium with threonate in it, and I think I'm saying that right. Magnesium threonate, and then there's a magnesium with L-theanine, which is calming to the nervous system. I might have those backwards. But I have to do more than one magnesium, especially at my age as I'm getting older. Because again, I'm going to mention it one more time that I've had post-traumatic stress disorders longer than you've been on the planet. I just had to say it again.
No, it's true. And I think a lot of times when we are looking at trauma and looking at the impacts of trauma, and like for you, post-traumatic stress disorder, I think we immediately go to therapy. Like that's always my first thought too, is like, oh, you need to get the mind right. Talk to somebody, go to EMDR therapy, all of that. But we forget about how we are very much machines that move through every day. And if we don't have the correct stuff going into our bodies, we're not going to have a good output, especially when you are already basically like beyond an empty gas tank living with post-traumatic stress disorder. I would encourage anybody listening where if you're feeling like you're incredibly exhausted and these things are just not working, maybe taking a look at some of the stuff that you're putting into your body or how you're going to sleep, taking a look at those things, I think beyond therapy as well.
I heard something once that made a lot of sense to me. Did you know that when you're doom scrolling, what your brain is actually doing is threat assessment? So if you're doom scrolling constantly, your brain is taking information in to make sure it feels safe, which keeps your brain activated, keeps your nervous system activated. So I've learned that I need to take social media breaks so that I can tell my brain we don't need to assess any more threats right now at all. And so I will stay on my phone and I'll play Duolingo. I've been playing chess for the last 4 months as a way to calm down because I figure like checkmating that king is the biggest threat I want to deal with at this moment. So I'm going to checkmate that king. And then I've solved my brain's need to assess a problem, but I'm doing it at a really low stakes way. So I'd really like to encourage everyone that thinks that I have to keep looking, or I have to stay informed, or I need to post about this to show that I'm an ally and this is really important. No, you don't. I actually saw some really big creators doing this, and I need to call this out. You do not need to comment on every single thing that's happening. What the most important thing might be for your body in that time is to calm down and to help your body feel safe in the moment so that you can go ahead and do whatever it is you do as a creator, an influencer, as a human being, where you feel like you might need to post something or share something about it. There were people calling out other creators saying, if they're not posting about this, unfollow them. And I couldn't. I could read about it, I could stay informed, but then I had to put my phone down. And that is a smart thing for me to do. It means I'm actually taking care of my body, because if I'm going to be in this for the long haul, and I am, if I'm going to be in this for the long haul, my first responsibility is taking care of this nervous system. First responsibility. It is not to posting to everybody else out there.
Because you only get one nervous system. You don't get to return it, get it, exchange it. There's no warranty. This is it. You got to take care of it. And thank you so much for saying that. I'm seeing so many people online comment on any big creator being like, what do you have to say about this? Use your platform for this. And sometimes it's okay for social media not to be about large acts of social justice. It can be used for that. But I mean, Jess knows and Ray knows that there are so many times where somebody in my life will say, oh, did you hear about this thing going on or this in the news? And I am very, which I don't know if this is good or not, but I'm very active about not scrolling as much, because I start to feel horrible. And so I feel bad when I'm not, participating in the friends and like supporting my friends in their comments all the time. But it's because I can't scroll without it becoming super detrimental to how I feel. And that's just not productive. Why are we destroying ourselves to try to make sure that we're commenting on everything just to appease everybody else? But that's not even what we wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, and to appease everyone else publicly. Like, I have to say something publicly without people understanding what's actually happening physically, internally. So on Saturday, when we heard about Alex Pretty's murder, I was in this mix of a trauma response, but I also was feeling incredible grief for the people of Minneapolis. I used to live in Minneapolis. I love that city. It's a fabulous American city. So all of this happening was crushing. And knowing that I had people and friends that were there, that were going through this and seeing this city torn apart the way that it was. So there was grief for that, and just sadness for Alex Pretty and for Renee Good, for their families, just the enormous amount of sadness. It's not always just a trauma response. Sometimes it's sadness and grief. And sometimes the most important thing we can do is let our bodies process it so that we can move through it and get to the next best thing. And that is healthy. That is a healthy emotional response, saying, I'm sad right now. I can't talk to anyone. I need a break to let my body feel what it's feeling. Because did you know that tears actually release cortisol? They aren't just helpful for, oh, good, I cried it out. It has a chemical benefit to the body to cry. We need to cry. We need to do that. And for those of us that tend to intellectualize our feelings, I am one of them. It took a long time for me to recognize that it is okay if I cry. And actually, the more I cry, the better I'm helping my body. The more I let my body be wherever it is in space and time, and just accept it, look at it objectively, and rest, cry, find some space. Joy is a valid form of resistance. You and I have talked about that. Joy is a valid form of resistance. Rest is a valid form of resistance. Letting yourself take a break from everything that is happening so that you can recharge is a valid form of resistance. We do not need to be on top of everything every single minute of the day to be considered an ally or a warrior in whatever's happening, or a commentator on everything that's happening. We need breaks. We have to take breaks, or we won't be there for the long haul.
That was so well said. Thank you for that. Speaking of, being a warrior and being an ally, I want to back up for a second, back to the Epstein Files for a moment. How did it get this far? How did we end up in a place where it took an act of Congress to get any form of accountability and transparency? Were there red flags that were ignored? What sort of institutional failure is happening? How did we get here?
That's a great question, and I may only be able to answer it partially. And this is important for everyone to understand for their own cases and their own situations as well. I don't do deep dives into Epstein lore, connections, past news articles. It is enough for me to stand up for my own experience with my sister survivors, with Virginia's family. That is enough for me. I don't deep dive. And what I always find really interesting is people send me all of these videos about Epstein. They literally DM me, did you know about this? Did you know about that? Kind of in your face.
You're like, I'm so fucking scared right now. Please stop sending me that. I don't want to know.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like I've told a couple people and I'm like, why do people think that they're enlightening me somehow on my own case or that I would want to know? Anyway, I'm sure it is done in the or tagging me everywhere. And did you know about this? Yes, let's dive deeper into the dark together. No, I'm not. I'm actually really okay. I'm really okay. I think what's really important for people to remember is that this actually started in 1996 with Maria Farmer putting in her complaint to the FBI. A part of the complaint came out in the files back on December 19th, which vindicated her because for a long time, everyone's saying what she was lying, but that was not true. There's a copy of the complaint. And the FBI never following up in that moment. And this is the point that I want to make to everyone. Back in 1996, when she filed that complaint, it wasn't as if Epstein was a nobody. At that point, he had already been at the White House. He had already been hanging out with Donald Trump. So when she filed that complaint with the FBI, it wasn't just some Wall Street bro that no one had heard of. It would have taken an easy search for people to understand, oh, it's Jeffrey Epstein she's talking about. So the fact that they ignored a report, didn't bother to call her back. And as I understand it, and I could be wrong, but I hung up on her when she tried to talk to someone about it. That was the first moment of betrayal and when they should have done something. And what I go back to, and this is the really painful part that I had to come to terms with in talking with my lawyer and them saying like, Jessica, do you realize if they had listened to Maria back in 1996, how different your life would have been?
Mm.
That you would have known only 5 years later that it wasn't your fault for freezing, that you would have learned that you weren't the only one. And that was a rough period of therapy to get through. The next date that's really important to remember is in 2006, a teenage girl and her mom go to the Palm Beach Police Department and they report that there is this man, Jeffrey Epstein, and he's doing A, B, and C, and tried to sexually assault this girl. So I didn't know much about the sweetheart deal at all. And this is that era, 2006 to like 2008, 2009 is called the sweetheart deal era. After that young girl and her mom came in, there was an investigation started. And there were over 30 minors that were identified. 30 minor victims were identified in that case. There was an attorney general. And again, I don't go on these deep dives, so I'm not the perfect person to be able to explain this. So I'm going to do the really condensed version that identified like a long list, I think like 84 counts against Epstein. And then Alex Acosta came along and said, yeah, we're going to let him off on 2 very minor infractions of soliciting prostitution with a minor, which that alone tells you everything you need to know about 2006, 2008. And then another infraction, but nothing in sex trafficking and not in pedophilia, not arresting him or charging him with any of the other long list of charges. Now, that's not even the worst of that one. So the girls that actually did come forward and did testify and were part of those testimonies, they were supposed to be alerted of the deal that was made. They weren't. They were never alerted that he got a slap on the wrist where he was able to spend 12 hours a day, 6 days a week in his office, working 6 days a week, and only slept at the jail and then hung out there on Sundays. 6 days a week. He led a really normal life. And it was his like chauffeur or bodyguard that would come and shuttle him from the jail to his office. That's horrific. So you have a complaint put in 1996. This arrest where the FBI did reach out to victims, knew about the past 1996 report, and he still was not found to be guilty of all the things he was actually guilty of and got this sweetheart deal.
We just kind of talked about how you don't always want to spend time like doing these deep dives and things like that. It doesn't feel good. And I also think it's important for people who are like really far away from this stuff to sometimes take a second, read,
Yes.
learn how bad it really is. And I experience this a lot with my guy friends. Like, God bless all of the male friends I have in my life. They're so wonderful. They're such good men. And they're willing to sit there and listen when I say, like, this is real. Like, this is a real story from a real person, a real experience. It really is that bad. And it's important to know that it's that bad, because when your first thought is, there's no way, that's unbelievable, more likely than not, that's how it is almost all the time.
Yes.
And you brought up something really interesting. So thinking about how, there's these systems in place, these institutions, and I want to shed light on this thing that I had heard a while back. There's somebody named Jason Kalsikanis, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's like a renounced billionaire, and he was not associated with Epstein, but was in the same rooms as Epstein early on. And there used to be these TED events called billionaire dinners, and Epstein was very much a part of them. Like, if you go to edge.org, you can look up like the Edge billionaires, and there's pictures of him in 1999 with all these people. And Jason, on a podcast recently, he said that we heard about, Epstein, like something kind of a run-in with the law was how they understood it. And just, it was just a misunderstanding. And so even people that were seeing him pretty actively, they thought too, oh, it's just a casual thing. Nothing really happening.
Exactly.
And so,
wow.
Yeah. And it makes me think about, we have government, we have law enforcement, we have universities, we have banks, we have everybody involved in the legal system, you have the friends. And when we say institutions, we are not only talking about what those are, but it's also how they are influencing how we think, right?
Exactly. Do you know what else was really fascinating? And when you were talking about how they didn't know, one of the reasons they didn't know is because it also was not covered well in the media at that time. It wasn't. I actually lived in Palm Beach County when this was going on. I lived in Palm Beach County. I owned a dance studio. I lived 20 minutes from where those girls lived that this was happening to at that time, and had no idea this case was even going on. No idea. That's how poorly everyone it was. And we weren't really on the internet looking at things. Things did not go viral. That didn't happen at that time. And so, you have to remember, Epstein was a master con man, and he could spin any narrative any way that he wanted. He easily brushed it off, which then means everybody else easily brushed it off. And I also think he was just really good at, when he was with certain groups of people, he assumed the integrity of the people around him. And that way, when he was questioned on his integrity or his intentions, he'd be like, well, these people know me. Like, I'm good. I belong here. He was that manipulative and that much of a psychopath.
Terrifying. But it never came off that way, because if it would have come off that way, then he wouldn't have had the web that he had.
People ask why there are people still associated with him after 2008. It's because they didn't know. They didn't really know what happened at all. Exactly as that man said on that podcast. They had no idea.
Yeah. He seemed like a fun guy who was rich and was incredibly social, and who wouldn't want to be a part of that? So when we're talking about institutions, these are systems that shape how society responds to harm, right? We have government, law enforcement, universities, banks, the legal system. They all play a role in this. And when I think about institutions, I think that they are not just places that enforce rules, they're places that heavily influence culture. And so when sexual violence is treated as a liability or a public relations issue, that attitude begins to spread, right? We look up to these institutions and these groups to sort of tell us how we should feel about certain things. And so in the Epstein case, institutions failed at multiple points. When survivors go to try to get justice for what happened to them and what somebody did to them, there's typically failure at multiple points. And with that failure, we need transparency to matter. We need transparency to matter, because without it, accountability does not exist. And so in this instance, the DOJ broke the law. Institutions failed us again, as they continue to fail us. But how do we hold on to hope without lying to ourselves? What can we do as a community when institutions don't show up the way that we need them to?
That's a great question. And I love how you framed it by really talking about institutions, because the other institution that you left out, that was the media. The media failed. Like I said, back in 2006 to 2008, the media did not cover this in any way to let anyone know that there was any danger hanging out down the street, that there was a pedophile living on their street and in their town and in their county. And so, when we talk about holding people accountable, it's not about what happened in the past. It's about how we're going to make it right for the future so that the same thing doesn't keep happening. But we seem to be on this hamster wheel of the wrong thing continually happening, specifically in this case over 30 years. But as you and I know, in pretty much any sexual assault case that ever comes up, anytime a woman says, "This happened to me," and how it gets spun in different institutions, fails to respond, fails to even see the victim as a victim, questions their accusations, questions who they are as a human. So the question is, how do we keep hope in those moments? And that's actually why I started doing what I'm doing, which was creating a sexual assault first aid kit in an app that is a social safety app. And the reason is that I kept watching our institutions only treat sexual assault as a crime and never looking at it as an injury, as an actual injury that needed care. And it's because it's invisible, because it's a nervous system injury, right? So they don't notice that this is an injury that happens, that crosses a boundary of safety, and that lack of safety in the world then activates trauma responses that get stuck and got stuck in me for 30 years. And if you think about it, there's not a single organ or system that is not touched by the nervous system. Every single organ in the body, every single cell in the body is affected by the nervous system. So when we are injured, when our nervous system is injured, our lack of safety, that boundary of vulnerability is crossed. It's an injury that is going to have physical repercussions. And so my frustration, even though we know this from the therapeutic side, those therapists know it, the mental health professionals know it, but it had not crossed over into our justice system understanding that, our healthcare system understanding that, the media understanding that, people that write about true crime or do podcasts about true crime, not understanding trauma and how it affects the body and the brain and how we speak about it, how we understand it in ourselves, how we heal from it.
So sort of the first step is looking at sexual assault and separating it from the legal or institutional side with the human side.
Exactly. And this is a really reasonable thing to consider because we do it everywhere else. When you get in a car accident, even if you caused it, let's just say you caused it, and the police officers get there and you are injured, the first thing they do is not call the insurance company. They call an ambulance to take care of your injuries first. Because you will be useless, obviously, to an insurance company if you have an injury that has been sustained. But the difference is you can see the blood in an injury like that. And they can't see and don't understand what is happening when our nervous system has had a barrier break to our safety and our sense of an intruder crossing that nervous system barrier and breaking our sense of safety. For me, it was really different too, because I froze. So Shannon, because I froze, I thought it was my fault. I thought I could control whether I did some ninja moves to get out of there. And that lie that I told myself made me really vulnerable and made me lose trust in myself. So society did not help me with that. In 1991, the laws were, rape is determined by how much you resist, how much you say no, how much you fight them off. And so that institution reinforced my injury.
So if we can look at sexual assault as an injury, it enables us to look at this problem from a different lens, right? Right now, we are basically saying that we are entirely reliant on a system, aka institutions, that are not working. They are not actually reliable, but yet we still are leaning on them to sort of fix this. And so, what else can we do? Like, do we need to look to the people closest to us? Do we need to build our own skills? What can we do since these people we rely on are no longer actually reliable?
Yeah, and I think that that's a really big key, because what we see right now with sexual assault is someone discloses, or whether they do or not disclose, they shuffle off to some stranger at a crisis center, getting a rape kit to a police station by themselves while they're traumatized, right? And there's no safety bubble in that at all. There's nothing to tell their nervous system to calm down and to find safety and support. Just like I know rice. Do you know rice?
Mm-mm. Well,
Rest,
maybe.
ice, compression, elevation, right?
Okay,
It's
yes.
simple.
I've never
Okay,
even
right.
thought about it as a acronym. I just think about, okay, when you're injured, you need to make sure you raise your leg, all that.
Rest, ice, compression, elevation. We know that. I don't need to be a mental health or a medical professional. If somebody sprains their ankle right in front of me, I know rest, ice, compression, elevation. I can help them with that. If somebody is choking on something, I know the Heimlich maneuver. I can help them. I don't wait for the ambulance to get there while they're turning blue and let them potentially pass because I'm like, well, I'm not a medical professional. There are so many things that we can do with the safe, trusted people that are very close to us that will completely change the outcome for a victim of sexual harm. Completely.
So, talk to me about some of those things. What can we do when somebody is sexually assaulted to support them? What is sort of the parallel of the Heimlich to stop, drop, and roll? What is the parallel of that with sexual assault?
What the research says is that when someone has gone through a traumatic experience, if we surround them within the first 24 to 72 hours with safety, trust, and support, and we're there for them, and that safety, trust, and support extends for 90 days, 3 months, we can completely minimize the damage of post-traumatic stress disorder, even minimize them ever getting post-traumatic stress disorder. And not a lot of people understand that. They don't understand that their simple positive response and their care of the person that disclosed for them in those first moments, all the way up through 90 days, just like any other injury. You fall down and you break your leg, you go into the doctor, you get a cast. The doctor says you'll be out of the cast in 8 weeks. You're going to have to be really careful and not be able to drive for 2 months. So someone is going to need to help you. If we would start treating sexual assault and sexual harm in that way, that, hey, just make someone feel safe, be there for them as if it is any other injury, and do it for an extended period of time, for 90 days, we can help someone have a completely different life after sexual harm.
Yeah, and somebody doesn't have to do all the things that Jess has to do living with post-traumatic stress disorder. They don't have to take 19 supplements a day. They don't have to be as careful about when they turn the lights off. They don't have to live through life with their fear sensors on high. They can live a life. And it's not to say that you don't thrive. You are amazing, but you have to do so much more every day to make it through the day. And people can be a part of that.
People can be a part of that. And I will tell you that I was actually bedridden for about 2 years. And it was the long-term detrimental damage of adrenal fatigue syndrome. Adrenal fatigue syndrome is that it's like your adrenaline and cortisol are off the charts to a point where what happened to me, that my adrenals were not even making cortisol anymore. So there was all gas and no break at all. And my body shut down for about 1.5 years, 2 years, where I could do the very least in life to sustain a life, the very, very least, and was bedridden the majority of the time. And it took a long time to get out of that. It's one of the reasons why I want people to understand that this is an injury first before it's a crime. And I want them to understand that too, was because technically my rape did not fall within the legal definitions of a rape. And so I thought I didn't need help. And so if we wait for the criminal justice system and law enforcement to decide when we've actually been harmed, and we only let our experience fall within those definitions, we will never heal from, potentially never heal from that injury. My injury is not determined by the law. My injury is determined by what happened to me. And those two things are extremely separate. And right now, there's this judgment in society. Well, it didn't happen if it doesn't fall within this guideline. And that's just not true.
There are so many things in there that I want to point out, but one of the biggest ones is that when you have a friend in your life or somebody in your life who is harmed, like in a car accident or they fall down the stairs or something like that, I know that there is this feeling of hopelessness, like you want to help, but you can't really do anything. But this is a scenario where you can very much make a very real impact. Like you can prevent, like what you were saying, you can prevent the years of post-traumatic stress disorder. You can prevent that future harm by being with somebody within the first 24 to 72 hours after sexual assault and then extending into that 90 days. Whereas, if somebody breaks their ankle, you can help them get better, but you're not preventing maybe a future injury, right? So this is a very tangible thing that I think it should really bring them hope that you can have a very big impact on the people around you who are harmed. And this is not to say that we can't also expect and want and push for institutions to create change, but it is to say that we can be a part of that change. If we're expecting institutions to make change but not doing anything ourselves, that's keeping the problem over there without looking around us and saying, what can we do to make something?
Exactly. When you were just talking about injuries and you were talking about like a sprained ankle or a broken ankle or a car accident, the other thing that doesn't happen with either of those is people go, well, how did it happen? There was no deep interrogation into, well, was it your fault? And if it was your fault for breaking your own leg, I will then withdraw my care. And that is important for people to understand. We don't need you to ask any more than any other issue. We don't need you to ask how it happened. Were you responsible? We don't give less care, less medical care, less community care to someone who's been in a car accident if they accidentally ran a red light and they ended up in a car accident, right? They don't accidentally fall down a set of stairs and break their leg and suddenly, well, you should have known better than wearing those slippery slippers, down that staircase. So I'm not going to be here for you. And that happens every single day for sexual assault survivors.
Yeah. Even people who get DUIs and are in car accidents, before they take them off to jail, they address their injuries first.
Exactly. And that is not to say that sexual assault survivors are it's ever their fault, but it is an example that even when it's someone else's fault so that an injury happens, they recognize it as an injury first. Even in those extreme situations, like there's never any consideration, well, they got a DUI, so we're not going to get the ambulance here at all. No, that doesn't happen. But with this issue, it's like responsibility has to be assumed. Somebody has to be to blame first before I can care about you.
Thinking about it this way makes it much easier, I think, to care for other people. We
don't
like
need details. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to have all the details. Like you can just care. And so I would love if you sort of talked through what does that step-by-step community response look like after somebody is sexually assaulted? How can we do that?
So can I tell you about our app?
Oh, yes, Jess, please do. Everybody open your ears. It's time for Jess to really shine. She's been shining the whole time, but this is really important.
There are some really simple ways we can show up for each other, but I wanted to make it even simpler. So I created an app, a social safety app that teaches people to know what to do when someone says me too, because nobody has ever taught us this. And so we need some help in understanding. So firstly, I realized that everybody's on their phone, so it needed to be something that was accessible on the phone. The other thing that I noticed and learned from young people is it's not that people don't know how to ask for help in a crisis. It's that they don't know how to ask for help ever. Like we really, as adults, struggle to ask for help because there's this assumption that once you pass 18, you should have all the answers. You should know how to respond to something. You should know how to take care of yourself. And if you can't, you're somehow lacking in knowledge, incapable, irresponsible. And that is a problem on you. That's not a problem on society or education systems that you didn't know something. Right? So at 18, as I understand it from young people, is no one wants to ask for help for anything. That there's a struggle in that, a real struggle. And so our app is based on the concept of stop, drop, and roll, a really simple thing to remember. You have your people, your trusted people. There have to be 2 to 3 people that if you got into a car accident or you broke your leg, those are the people you would call. Those are your safe people. And with those safe people, you make a pact. You make a pact that, hey, I'm going to be here checking in on you daily when things are not so bad and we're not in a crisis, so that you can trust me and I can be that person for you when there is chaos or when there is a crisis. So you have your people, you make a pact to check in with each other and be there for each other within 24 hours of something happening, right? Like within 24 to 72 hours of a big crisis, so that they will be there for you. And then in the app is plan. So it's people, pact, and plan. And in plan is, this is what I'm going to do in the event of some catastrophic, traumatic event, like a sexual assault or sexual harm or sexual exploitation online or any type of breaking that nervous system barrier of safety. And you and your safe circle agree to support each other. Do you need an app for this? No, you don't. You can actually do it right now. You can figure out who your top 3 people are. You can form a trusted little text group and you can say, hey, let's just check in daily and see how each other's doing.
I think we should start normalizing having a group of people that you know will be there if something happens.
100%.
And it's not to try to instill fear. It's looking at the reality from statistics right now and saying, like this could happen. And so it's just better to know that I'll have people who are there if it does, or that I am somebody's trusted person. It's better to know ahead of time than waiting for something to happen. And it's not weird. It is not weird to ask your friends to be there for you if something ever happens. Like it's the same way that, parents will say, if you drink in high school, I won't like it. But, if you're ever at a place and you can't get home and you need a ride, call me.
Exactly.
It's just, you have those in place because we live in a world where people do cause harm and commit harm on other people.
But this is the other important thing about that. After the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, we have active shooter drills in every single school in our country. But I ran the stats yesterday, and did you know that your child is 250 times more likely to experience sexual assault than ever be injured in a school shooting? And we have exactly 0 safety plans, pre-crisis protocols to know what to do when that type of injury happens. 250 times, Shannon. That's absurd. So money is being spent for risk prevention, not just to stop a shooting, but to minimize the damage when it happens. We have prevention, we have crisis care, we have reactive crisis care, and we have prevention. And there is this huge gap in the middle of, but what do we do when it happens? Parents don't know, teachers don't know, and anything that they do know is related to the crime. It's not related to an injury. We have to call the police. We have to tell the principal. We have to report it. We have to go to an RA. Everything is related to evidence collection and criminal decision-making. Is somebody a criminal? And it is not focused on, this is an injury. How do I respond to the injury in this moment first? How do I give this person sexual assault first aid care first? So I am creating an app that will help people know exactly what to do when someone says Me Too.
Just in case somebody says, what on earth is Me Too? What is Me Too? What does that mean?
That's a very good question. The Me Too movement was a moment in time where all of us as a collective started putting the hashtag Me Too on our social media, and no other words, but we just said Me Too. I experienced sexual assault. I experienced sexual harm. People were finally admitting publicly that yes, this happened to me. I am included in this group of people that have claimed sexual harm. And the sad part about it is that was only 2017. That was only 9 years ago. Before that, we had no idea the volume of sexual harm that was happening in society at all.
Wow. So when you're saying know what to do when someone says Me Too, you're saying that you will know what to do when somebody discloses their sexual harm, that you will have actionable steps on how to help them and take care of them, because that's what the people in your life and extended circles, that's what they deserve, is for us to know how to support them when they are harmed.
Exactly, exactly. And most of the time, what happens right now is sexual assault survivors are navigating the myriad of decisions that have to be made, the myriad of options that have to be chosen while they're traumatized, and they're doing it all by themselves. And that is horrific and adds to the level of trauma and stuckness that we can feel. In the day after I was sexually assaulted, I told a friend. She actually was very, very kind, and she believed me right away. And her first response was, we should go to the police. Because that's all we knew back in 1991, right? She did all the right things, but in my traumatized brain, all I could think of is nobody's going to believe me, and I shut it down. No one is going to believe me. Nobody else was in the room. I didn't go running and screaming out of the building. So when we leave our brains, our traumatized brains, to make all of those choices, it's a disservice to us in being able to heal, but then it further inhibits justice from happening. Because she was right, I should have gone to the police. But the truth is, nobody would have believed me back in 1991. That's the reality, is nobody would have believed me in 1991.
Think about when you like get smacked in the face or something like that. And then if somebody's like, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? And we need you to do this complicated math problem and decide all this stuff. You'd be like, bro, I just got slapped in the face. Like, let me have a couple minutes. And so you have somebody who's experienced one of, I think scientifically, the most traumatic things that can happen to a human being is to be sexually assaulted. And then you are asking them to decide whether they want to pursue legal action against the person who harmed them, decide whether they want to go to a hospital and have an incredibly invasive exam, decide if they can go to work the next day, to make all of these incredibly life-altering decisions, because deciding to pursue any legal action against somebody is not just, oh, well, just do it and then it'll, the police, they'll handle it. It can mean you are signing yourself up for years of interviews and being re-traumatized and having to relive that experience while still trying to live your life separately from that.
But what you're saying also makes a lot of sense too, because think about this. In that moment, you're asking me, because we all know, look, let's just say it. It's about 70% of the cases are from people we know. It's not some stranger in an alley. So you're asking me in that moment while I'm traumatized, do you want to send this person to jail for the rest of their life? Or do you want to let them go scot-free and never say anything about it again? There's really that very black and white line of choice in that moment while you're traumatized. And what does your brain first do before you even start to fight, flight, freeze, fawn? Before that is you're normalizing the behavior. Your brain is normalizing what's happening. And so it takes a long time for the brain to calm down and go, well, that wasn't normal. That shouldn't have happened. We first go into, well, I normalized it because maybe I led them on. I normalized it because I wore the wrong thing. We self-blame. We can't expect in that moment, when there are so many complex things to be considering, to have to do this all alone. When we say, why has there not been justice for survivors? They didn't have proof. It was their fault. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. We're asking the wrong questions. We're assessing a situation, again, from a criminal perspective, and we're not assessing it from that person just needs help, just like they broke their leg. They need at the very, very basic level of their body, they need calming, safety, support, and trust in that moment. It's not just I see a campaign that goes around there like, start by believing. Yes, that's the bare minimum. That's the bare minimum. Now, how do you make them feel safe? That's the question. How do you make a person feel safe in that moment when they've just been violated?
I have one more question. I want to do an entire episode on this, but I think that you're the right person to ask at least the beginning question of this. As a survivor, I think you end up having to interact with all these people, friends, family members, people at work. One of the hardest things is thinking about, wow, I really wish my family understood this or, knew how to support me better. And so let's say there is a family member of somebody who's been assaulted listening. What is one thing that they should know about sexual assault or how to take care of somebody?
You said name one, but I'm going to name like three things. One is you don't need details to care for them. It is not going to hurt them. This is two, is not going to hurt them if you bring it up. In fact, if you pretend that nothing happened, it feels worse. I can't tell you how many people I've told about what happened to me, and they have never said a word about it again. So I'm often left being the one being like, hey, and Epstein was in the news again, and I'm really sad, and I'd really like some support, where I have to keep asking for help. And so it's okay to bring it up.
What is a good way for them to bring it up? What is a way that will help? I think it'll be different
That's a
for
great
everybody.
question.
What's like a generally
That's a great.
safe way to bring it up?
I've been thinking a lot about what you told me last week about what happened to you, Shannon. It's made me feel really sad and really helpless because I don't know what to say and I don't know what to do. But it's really important to me that you know I'm here for you for whatever you need. And that means distraction, where I just come over and I help you by bringing some popcorn and we watch our favorite movie together and laugh. It's by, do you want me to start calling crisis centers and see if I can find some professional help for you? And I'll hold your hand and drive you there. Is it that you want somebody to sit down with you and maybe write out details and I'll go with you to the police? And it doesn't matter what you choose, but I can't let another day go by without letting you know that I'm in your corner and that I'm here for whatever you need. Without a single question, without a single inquiry, I'm here for you.
Thank you for that. On the receiving end, it just feels like a safe space. It feels like I can open my heart up to you, because also you had a couple moments of vulnerability in there too. Like, you admitted as the person receiving this information that you might not know exactly what to do, but that you want to be there and that you're willing to make the steps to be there.
I made myself cry. And I think it's because people just don't know what to say, and they really, really genuinely can be great people, and they just don't know what to say. So if I were to say, like, let's narrow it down to this one thing of how do I bring this up to someone that I love? It's what you said, the first thing that we said. We said, I don't need to know any details, but it's acknowledging what they said. When you said this to me last week, yesterday, last night, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it because I care about you. Acknowledge that they shared it. And then saying, you don't need, and I am not owed any details. I don't need details to care about you. And the third thing is, I'm here for anything. I'm here for whatever level of care that you need. I have a friend that told me, she's like, Jessica, I never want to talk about it again. I said, awesome. When you are, I'm here. Or if you need something comes up and it triggers you, that's great. Just let me know. I'm here. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what their response is. It doesn't matter what they say they need. You are good to go with everything and anything.
Right. I always say this. I can never remember where I heard it. So if anybody knows where this quote comes from, please email me. It is such a luxury to be close to somebody's vulnerability. And when somebody discloses harm to you, remember that. Remember when somebody is hurting, of what an honor it is to be able to be close to that and be able to be an arm's length of caring for them.
100%. Couldn't be said better. Couldn't be said better.
So, Jess, you shared this incredible information. What can people do next related to this app that you're building, and where can people follow you? I always link this information down below, but I want to hear it from you first.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Everyone can follow me on Jess Michaels Speaks, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, and stay tuned into those pages, because I'm going to let you know when we're doing a public launch. And what we're going to need in that public launch is a lot of people going in and just testing out the app and giving us feedback before we do, a massive launch to schools and to the public. Just kind of like a quiet launch. We're letting people in on when we're going to be launching. And then if you really want to make sure that you know when we're launching, please go to 3joannes.com, and it's the number 3joannes.com, and go ahead and go through that landing page, and you're going to see a spot that says I want to be an early beta tester, and you can sign up for our mailing list.
It's cool to be a part of change, a part of social safety, a part of societal differences. And so I highly recommend everybody go sign up for that. I've gotten the privilege of being able to test out the app a little bit, and it's really cool.
Yes.
And Jess is very receptive to feedback too. Jess is not just somebody who is building an app for the sake of building an app. Jess genuinely wants to change how we respond to sexual assault. And so she is building something that will respect that. And so she is not hurt when you give her feedback. She wants it, guys.
Yeah.
And so be a
Yeah.
part of this change. Go to her website. I'll link everything down below. Follow Jess on socials. Follow the With You Too app on socials as well. Jess, thank you so much for being here and for spending time with me. It is always such a joy to talk to you and just to hear your insight. I am really grateful for having you today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on, Shannon.
If you want to send us a message, go to whattheydon'tsay.com and click on the Send Us a Message tab. We love to hear from you, whether it's a story or you have an episode idea or a question. It is so great to hear from you guys. I love you guys so much. I will talk to you next week. We'll catch you on the flip side, and cheers.
Cheers.